Good. Okie, and welcome to another session of Sport for All Breaking Barriers. We have a couple new faces from the first session, so that's great. So we're very excited to continue on our journey with you all and our commitment to being an inclusive and accessible sport community that celebrates quality experiences. Our team welcomes everyone to Sigokatoki Sport Council, which is located on the traditional lands of the Blackfoot Confederacy. We acknowledge and respect the many First Nations whose footsteps have marked these lands for generations. We are grateful for the traditional knowledge keepers and elders who are still with us today and those who have gone before us. We recognize the land as an act of reconciliation and gratitude to those whose territory we reside, work, and play on. So for tonight's session on connecting newcomers, building community and inclusion through sports, we are so excited to be joined by Fred Trinh and Thiago Bastos, who will share and provide perspectives based on their lived experiences as newcomers. And we are lucky to be joined by John Lafferty from Lethbridge Family Services, Immigrant Services, who will provide insight based on his work with newcomers. This session will be a Q&A format with myself as the moderator. Bear with me, it is my first time. So throughout the session, if you have a question that comes up related to what the panelists are talking about, or a follow-up question that relates to what was previously asked, feel free to ask. As well, we will have a designated question and answer period at the end. So to begin, we will start by having the panelists introduce themselves and a bit about their experiences. So maybe we'll start with you, Fred.
Okay. Hi, I'm Fred. My family and I were the last wave of the boat people immigrated in 1982 to Canada. We left for Vietnam, aiming for Thailand, but got chased by Thai pirates and ended up in Indonesia. From there, we stayed at a refugee camp. Then, why Canada? My dad could say a few words in French because from Vietnam, we said, oh, they speak French in Canada, so let's go to Calgary. My uncle is also there. So that's how we end up in Calgary. At that time, for those of you that's in the room, we hit the recession during that time, and so we went to Drumheller, small town from here, and my parents washed dishes. My dad worked in a tent. Little background: my dad was a headmaster in Vietnam. He was a teacher, that's principal, vice principal. Then my mom was she owned her own business, very independent person, and so for them to go from that to dishwashing and work in a factory, it was that's why they're my hero. So from there, we hosted some friends coming through town for a little bit, and they said to my parents, friends of friends, they said, why are you washing dishes in Drumheller for $4 when you can wash dishes in Yellowknife for $8? Well, let's go. And then that's how we end up in Yellowknife. And I called Yellowknife my hometown. And since then, came down here in 94 to go to school and stayed here. Since then, built a life, met my wife here at the university, and now I'm teaching there for these past years. So through that whole community experience with sports and stuff like that, I know that I would not be in my position if it wasn't for people that care about kids, opening up a gym, twisting their arms and letting them supervise by reading a book in the gym for me and my friends to play. I'm grateful. At night, we had people from the community volunteer to run a program for badminton. So I learned badminton, soccer, because there's soccer, and had a choice to go to Canada Games for soccer and badminton. I chose soccer because I knew I was going to get killed in basketball, badminton and soccer. It's a lot easier to lose with friends than lose by yourself, right? So that's why we chose soccer. And from that, I went on to have a career as a coach here. I was a couple coaches before Thiago took over. So it's been because of that community involvement. I know that for sure I wouldn't have the job that I got from the university because they needed a sessional for teaching badminton at U of L. I was in the right place at the right time, and that's how I kind of snaked my way in and stayed ever since. Yeah.
Awesome. Thanks, Fred. John?
So hello everyone, my name is John. I have nowhere near as an exciting story as Fred has, how I came to Canada. So I've been in Canada since 2018. I work for Lethbridge Family Services, the Immigrant Services department. So we assist about 900 individuals per year to navigate some of the challenges that they face in Lethbridge. Of that 900, there's about 220 refugees per year, thereabouts, who arrive, many of which have lived in a refugee camp for a significant period of time, many of which who are illiterate in their own language, let alone trying to understand English or French. And so I'm supported by a fantastic team. We have currently 46 staff on our books, of which they all come from 23 different countries, and the staff speak 29 different languages, and the staff are hugely passionate about the job that they do. One component of that team is we have a youth settlement service team who look after pretty much from 0 to 25 young adults and children of that age range. So my interest in sport includes, I used to play a lot of soccer when I was young. I also did some cross-country running, and then I loved mountaineering. As I got older, those interests require a lot more physical fitness than I'm able to give to those particular sports, but I do enjoy watching sport, particularly soccer. So every evening I go home and I log onto YouTube and I catch up with all the soccer games that take place in Europe. So that's my first thing. Oh, after I kiss my wife. So I then, sometimes I get it in the wrong order, but she soon lets me know if I get it in the wrong order. Yeah,
awesome. Big soccer group tonight. And Thiago?
Hi, my name is Thiago. I've been in Canada since 2015. I came here on the Boxing Day of 2014, so I consider 2015. Sports is everything in my life. I was always hyperactive, so my mom always had trouble to get me set at home, so sports was a big part of my education and discipline. So one of the sports that I actually into was judo, because of discipline and energy. So I progressed from there to become provincial and national level judo by 11, 12. And then of course, coming from Brazil, it's everything about soccer. So soccer was always a passion. I always kept playing soccer all the way through my life, through university in Brazil. It is hard because for us Brazilians, we're not considered refugees, even though the level of violence in Brazil is the highest compared to any other country. Stats from Brazil say that there is more homicides in Brazil than any other war together in the world. So it's about 60 to 70,000 homicides a year. That was a huge factor for me to emigrate. One of those victims was my uncle, my mom's sibling, a long time ago when I was in high school. And then by 2013, my brother suffered an attempt of kidnap. It was Christmas Eve. So at that point in time, I decided that it was like if I wanted to, in that point in time, I had a girlfriend, we were engaged, we were getting married. We decided at that point in time, if we wanted to raise a family, find a place that we could be safe and that we could have a minimum quality of living, it would be the ideal, and that's how I decided to come to Canada. My whole family is in Brazil. Now I have my own family, so I'm not the first generation anymore. I have 2 kids. I met my wife in Winnipeg, but I came here in 2015, and it was funny because everything goes wrong, right? So like after I stopped playing university, I disconnect a little bit with soccer. You get into your life, you're working, I was just playing for fun. And then I came to Canada. I came with no English, so I took some immigration services help in Winnipeg when it comes to find another Brazilians to get settled and things like this. So I got a job, I didn't speak English, so I washed cars, I washed dishes, and by 2016 I think I figured out there was a newcomers or refugee drop in soccer at the University of Winnipeg on the weekends, and I used to go there and play soccer on the weekend, and then I met a person, and that person had a soccer team, and then he invited me to play on his soccer team, and then he used to coach his daughter age group as well, so he invited me to be the assistant coach, and through the club I got my first Canadian license, the C license, so they paid for it, and while I'm going through my C license, I was invited to be part of the provincial program in Manitoba for soccer, and through that I got experience to be a head coach of a provincial level, and it helped me to get my job here. So it's like, in a sense, being able to have access to the Immigrant Services that was providing drop-in soccer, it made me be where I am right now, and I'm very grateful for that.
That's awesome. So I guess kind of building on that, John, what have your clients or families maybe perceived as the biggest barrier to accessing sport or participating?
Difficult to say the biggest barrier. There's a number of barriers. So there's transportation for one, is that refugees or even newcomers arriving don't have access to a personal vehicle to use to get to sporting clubs. There's also a financial aspect as well, is because they, certainly on the refugee side, they're on an income support model in the first 12 months. Is the money that they're given pays for their survival elements, and so they can't afford to attribute money to join sporting clubs or even to purchase sports equipment. Language is another one, because many children don't speak the language, and many adults don't speak the language as well. So that also proves a barrier. And so those there are others, but those are probably the three main ones: language, transportation, and affordability.
And do you have any advice for sport organizations to address these barriers?
Well, yeah. So that's not to say that it's a brick wall that can't be. Our whole ethos, regardless of what service we provide, is if we see a barrier, we try to find a way around it. So there's things like, the Lethbridge city's got this amazing thing, the fee assistance program, which is really, really helpful, and we help families apply for that. The transportation side is a little bit of a challenge, and particularly the Lethbridge bus transit system as well may not go past particular clubs. So that's always a difficult one. But we can assist this. Some things that we through donations, and we can provide. It used to be bus tickets we used to provide, but Lethbridge Transit has changed the system. And the affordability side is that we've received some wonderful donations of sports equipment through various organisations. So even the provision of that is not a huge barrier that we can't negotiate. Particularly if sporting clubs as well have items that can be loaned, so that we can participate. But there's also the nature of the parents' employment also may prevent it. Is that, particularly with children, if you've got a young teenager who's finishing school, and your young teenager may be looking after other kids whilst one of the parents is gone for employment. But whilst barriers exist, they can be broken down.
Hence this workshop. So Fred, what did you identify personally as the biggest barrier or challenge to participate in sport as a newcomer?
Yeah, that's a good question, because for us, I looked at some would say my childhood was one of, my parents were neglectful because they were always working and I had the free run of the community, right? So, but I thought it was brilliant. It was great. So in terms of, I got to play a lot, lots of after school sports. I was able to do. We have kids now. My wife is also an athletic director at one of the school here, and we see how much sport is costs. To that is a huge barrier, and I'm concerned. If you look at the participation report card on kids being active, we are very poor as a society of kids being active over 180 minutes a week. We know this exists, and we know this is a concern, but surprisingly in that report card comes out, we're really good at paying for sports. We get a B instead of a D minus in being active. So society's moved to a pay per play model, and that to me is a huge concern. I know I wouldn't be here without the ability for kids playing sports in school for free or very minimal. We had jerseys that was 10 years old, but now it seems like every team is buying new jersey every year, paying for these traveling team experience. I didn't get that until I was at kind of games level or high performance level. Now it looks like high school kids are doing that day in and day out. They have tryouts at the highest level. I'm sorry, I coach at the university level. Kids in high school are just beginning. It's not an elite sport. It shouldn't be. It is. We need that pyramid for kids to come in and play and get to the love of the game, build some skill, to have this pyramid going up so they can represent Canada one day. I fear that with it now being so getting to be, if you have money, upper class, middle class, or middle upper, whatever you want to call it, you have a better chance. Kids like myself, if I was coming over now and you're talking about those barriers, I have no chance. I wouldn't be in front of you today. I wouldn't have my job at the university. I would not have this privilege of coaching at the universal level for 20 years. I wouldn't get to meet people like yourself, who's been one of my students there, and stuff like that, right? I know for a fact I'm here because our school system is awesome, because it gave me an opportunity to have those pathways. I was just a little punk, just running around, trying to keep busy or not get yelled or going home to do chores. If I was home, I had to do a chore. I'd rather play sports, right? And that's what the school program should be for kids. Yeah.
Thanks. And Thiago, I know you kind of mentioned language, but what did you identify as the biggest barrier challenge, especially coming as an adult?
I'm gonna piggyback on Fred's answer. Of course, I didn't come here as a child. For me, as a adult immigrant, it was kind of like information where I could find resources, like where to play, or if I wanna volunteer as a coach. There was nothing there. The immigration system that I got help was more towards like, hey, let's help you to settle here, let's find your job, let's figure out where you can get like volunteer towards like English, because I didn't speak English. But it's nothing as like, okay, you're working, you're doing this, like there's any sports that you interest, right? Like we might have something towards that. And it didn't have that. They had the drop-in, but the drop-in is kind of set up by the university itself, so it's not a connection I found by luck, I guess. Someone says like, hey, there's a soccer there. I would say, so piggybacking on Fred's answer, I think that lack of like, it is a pay-to-play system, and that is completely detrimental. For example, if I grew up here, I wouldn't be able to do it because my mom was a single mom with 3 jobs, and she definitely didn't have money to pay thousands of dollars in sports. And I was doing, I was a multi-sport athlete, so I did tennis, I was judo, played soccer, but all through the school system, right? The school system, I think, I might be wrong because I'm still crawling towards understanding the school system here, but the school system in Brazil, sports are mandatory. You have to do sports, like from elementary school to end of your high school, like the phys ed classes, it is mandatory, right? So if you kind of like start playing different sports and you find interest, the government heavily found Olympic sports, so that's why I got into judo. There's like, you don't pay to do judo, right? Like you find a club that might accept you, and there's clubs that are like high level, they're like, it might make you become professional. There's some just for recreational, but there's different clubs that get the kind of supporting funding. They're like, okay, like I did judo at school, I really like this, I want to do a little bit more. I did soccer, I did basketball. So the school system kind of sets you up that because you're doing different sports, kind of to find what is interest you, and then if you're doing soccer, it's free. If you're doing basketball, if you do whatever other sports, those sports will be free. So I think that's the main barrier here, on that sense. And the other thing that was very, especially here in Lethbridge, I was very interested to know that, for example, there's no high school competition. That's so common in US, but in Brazil so common as well. Like every schools have different sports teams, and through the schools now you might be playing. For example, I was playing soccer in a club, but then I'm playing soccer for my elementary school, I'm playing soccer for my high school team, and there is competition as well. And it doesn't matter what the level of the competition is, there is a sports component. You can do basketball at high school and be competing, you can do soccer. And in Lethbridge, at least in soccer, there's no soccer. That component of high school they can give. So there's a lot of barriers for newcomers: cost, language, and access. So for example, in Brazil, we don't have kind of like the school bus system that is here, but there's a special school bus that if there's families that they don't have transportation, you get after school, the bus is gonna get you somewhere so you can do sports. You take you to a drop point so your parents can pick it up. So if you can do a relation, you would say like the school bus will pick up the schools from like in downtown Lethbridge. They'll bring you here to the university. Kids will do different sports. For that after school, it helps with single moms, it helps with parents. They have 2-3 jobs because from school they go straight to a specific space for sports, and then the bus will take back to, for example, downtown Lethbridge, and then your parents will just go there, pick you up. So there's a lot of little things that are coming from a different culture that I see there is differences, and it only rewards the people that have access to it, instead of support people. You focus on people that don't have access. You focus more on people that have those means to, they can afford those things.
Interesting. So yeah, talking about those different cultural differences, Fred, what were some big cultural differences within sport in Vietnam compared to Canada? Like how Thiago was saying, the school system's different, and transportation, is that similar or?
Yeah, it's well, in Vietnam, it's still under sort of like the Soviet Union model. If you can run fast, well, you go on the track. You can jump. You know, they get identified very early. It's changed a little bit there now. Like you talk about access and stuff like that. I think you're right on that one point. And the transportation is also very key. It's easy to get around in Vietnam. Everybody's got a moped. It's easier by bikes here. Like if you look at the west side versus the south side, you know, something about that whoop up drive just psychs everybody out. You know, and I know for a fact we've hosted some international student. Our bus system sucks. It's just let's be honest here. It's a public transportation that shuts down at 8 at that time, and like what are you supposed to do? All these programs are after at night, stuff like that. We also have in Vietnam in the a lot of free play. You know, like in terms of in the street, you just go and you just play, and there's a little square here. We don't need fancy goals and scoreboards and stuff that you throw down a couple cans, or we see a lot of that, and if you're good, they'll find you. They'll progress. One of my cousin or nephew or whatever, his girlfriend is our national ranked B player. Like it's like bocce almost, like it's bowls. So I didn't even know that exists. So it's, I was just over there in May, in July, somewhere in May, right? And she was giving me the tour. They train 8 hours a day, and she's a provincial level national player. She's in her early 20s now, and she's been identified since she's 16, like you're talking about. They took her under, gave her an opportunity. She's now representing Vietnam in that sport. So there is a pathway there. For us in here in Canada, I think is I teach on this pathway, but it's hard. I think it's very hard for common folks to know what is the pathway, and we get very. I've coached on the youth side. It can get very political, as you say. I coach on the provincial side, and I was on the board. I can tell you, it's, we don't think about kids first. We think about position and fluff, right? We don't think about development or what's good. We pretend we're in there for the best interest of the kids, but I'm not convinced of that, right? So it's coming to see now, working in the system now, it is hard to unwind what we've been conditioned to do, like, well, we better pay this way, or we better buy this type of gear in order and hang out with this type of people in order for our kids to move towards or have this group of friends, right? So sport's supposed to be breaking down barriers, not create barriers, right? And I feel like I'm getting old complaining about this all the time, right? So it's, but like I can tell you, it's I can't. One of the projects we're gonna explore. I've been so privileged to be able. This test pilot project. I'm taking 18 of our students over to Vietnam. 16 of our students over to Vietnam. To look at, is fundamental movement skill, is it universal? Right, so we're doing this July coming up. We just picked our 18 students, 16 students this last week. And we got a massive grant to do this. Because I want to make sure that what we're learning here has just not in Lethbridge, is global, right? And let's make sure that we have a global perspective on this. And we're excited about it, and hopefully we shouldn't be complaining what we don't have, and look at how blessed we are here on some of the stuff that we have, and just make sure that we be creative and get more people involved.
Yeah, it's really interesting, the equipment piece. I was super lucky to get to go to Fiji this past year, and I'm a rugby player, for those who don't know, and they had a rugby session, so we went and they brought a football, and we were like, this isn't a rugby ball. They're like, well, that's why we're so good, because we'll play with a pop bottle, we'll play with a watermelon, we'll play with a football, we'll play on concrete, we'll play on sand, we'll play on grass. They're like, and that's why we're so good at the international stage. So it's interesting here, if you don't have the best cleats or the best hockey stick, we think of it as a barrier when really it challenges your skills.
Sure.
So I guess, kind of building on the barriers, John, how can sport organizations work maybe with Lethbridge Family Services to connect with and recruit newcomers to sport, kind of how Thiago said he couldn't even know about it or find the information.
So yes, and that is going to be a little bit of a challenge, but again not insurmountable, because the services that we provide, our funding restricts us on what we can do, and so but one of the things that we try to do is create linkages with various sporting clubs and various communities, community sports and activities. So it's pretty much communication. So if there is something which has happened, which is an activity which is happening, is that we can connect families to that particular activity. So we can introduce families to that activity, and even at times that we can go with the family and kind of explain and bring an interpreter along as well as we do that process, and then to introduce them to the activity and the sport. And there was a couple of things that just popped into my head as well. So I'm relatively new to Lethbridge, and that astounded me that there was no inter-school competitions. That absolutely shocked me.
In soccer.
In soccer.
In
Yeah.
soccer.
In soccer, what
In
about
soccer,
other?
I think there's other sports that they only have.
Yeah.
Is it,
Soccer doesn't have.
okay, is the other sports?
Yeah,
Is that-
basketball, volleyball, rugby, football,
Yeah.
badminton,
But not
track.
typically until you're later in school.
That's
So
right.
like elementary kids, that some will have some, like
Some.
at the Catholic schools they do, but not at the public schools unless they do it within their school, but not inter-school.
Yeah.
And then,
They just started.
They're just starting.
grade 6. Yeah.
Do they do like an athletics day? Or a Lethbridge athletics day, an inter-school athletics
they
day?
do it, like they do a school kind of track
Yeah.
programs, like in the spring, but
That's about it.
Yeah, because and again, like crawling into the system for me was like it helped my mom for sure because she had 3 jobs. So but for me, it's like I was there after school every day. So I was on the volleyball team, even though clearly, but I was on a volleyball team. I was on a handball team. So I was a setter for volleyball. I was a goalie in handball. I was a futsal player. I was doing basketball. So like Monday to Friday, I was there after hours. My mom needed to find a place for me to stay, and that was the most exciting thing for me because when it comes to time for competition, I knew I'd be busy. And from grade 5, grade 6, grade 7, now you're not only playing with your friends, you're competing against different schools. It was so exciting. And then you represent your school, and then it creates the things like people across the city knows you because of the specific sport. So it's just like a community connection where like wherever you go, like you play against those schools, you play against those players, you make more friends. For me, sports was always a social tool for me, and for a lot of us immigrants, it could be a massive social tool. It was through sports that I got where I am right now, but it was through sports, through those playing soccer with different people, that I went to washing dishes, to washing cars and going to dealership, right? So like I got it here, and I knew people. I played soccer with someone that would have a business that know someone, and got every single opportunity that I got related to soccer or not, because I went to car sales for 5 years. It was through sports. I was playing soccer with someone, they knew a general manager, so it becomes a huge social connection, especially if you come and you don't have friends. Some of us don't have family, right? So it's like, and for kids, it's the same thing. It's when you're growing up, you can connect not only with your neighbor, you can connect across the city, you can know more people. And nowadays, because there's no street components anymore, it makes a huge difference to be. And we can see, like, even for me as a university coach, I get some of those players the first years, the social and emotional skills are not there, right? And we keep losing year by year more social skills through those kids because there's less social connections, less live social connections, right? There's more like virtual connections.
Well, and soccer is the favourite sport of refugees and newcomers that arrive in Lethbridge. And if there could be that inter-school rivalry. So one of the other things about when I spoke about communication is that that advertising and communicate with us so we can provide that introduction. But it's also if clubs can have a kind of mentorship or a peer support element, because we're introducing someone who's relatively new, well, is brand new to Canada, and hasn't got a complete awareness of the culture and things and the customs perhaps of some of the sport clubs. So we can't. You're setting an individual up failure if you just throw them into the club and you kind of just go right on you go. if sport clubs have a kind of peer support or a peer mentor who for maybe from up to 3 months can just shadow, coach, mentor and provide that companionship and just to a bit of an induction period, so to make the individual feel more confident, for their confidence to grow, and then actually makes them feel welcomed, and then makes them feel included, and then they will have a sense of belonging to that team, and then you'll get the loyalty there, and they'll develop that whole network of friends as well. So that's pretty key, is that there's someone within the clubs who can do that, within a sport. Yeah, that'd be set them up for success.
Through University of Winnipeg, because I was assistant coach there last year, we did soccer component for refugees. They're just like just new refugees, right? So like those families are living in refugee camps for a year, 2 years. Some of those kids spend most of their lives in refugee camps. So having that soccer component, and it was just soccer, it was a little bit of multi-sport, and that ended up with soccer. It was more like physical literacy times for those kids. And there in Winnipeg, we did have the school buses bring them to the university and take them back to the point of being picked up. But having some of those kids spend most of the time in refugee camps, it's the door to bring them to a new culture where they might feel safer, where they can start like learning to be themselves, because they came from such a violence culture, or not violence culture, violence environment, that for them they need that component in order to fit in. Otherwise, it was even reading these days, because there's a major problem, for example, in Toronto area, right? Because we bring in refugees, we not bring them into the Canadian culture, into the society. We're not integrating them. Now they're becoming marginalized, right? And now there's a different kind of problem that is being created. So it's not only I think it affects every single corner of, we can bring them towards us, we can provide them a way through sports, and we can trigger them to society so they don't become marginalized. We bring them here and we just let them be marginalized.
Mm-hmm. So if like kind of school is a liaison to clubs, and obviously soccer isn't part of schools, say someone comes from a refugee camp, hasn't had the opportunity to play basketball, for example, it's pretty difficult then to show up in grade 10 and there's limited spots on a team. Are there any suggestions for schools to help with that transition? I guess any of you?
I was going like I see the program before, and I don't know if it's used in Lethbridge. So there's lots of sport and lots of sports pitches and sport facilities that are around Lethbridge, which is sat empty. And I've seen programs before where alongside there's been a little chest, and inside there's like a soccer ball, a football, a basketball, and perhaps some tennis rackets and things like that. And yes, it's based on an honesty, but at least people who can't afford a soccer ball, and this doesn't just go for newcomers to the city. This is probably, it's low-income families within the city as well, and it just provides, and it could be done through donations. And when the weather breaks and the winter eventually ends in August in Lethbridge, is then put the box out, let people use it, and then
The library does have
Is it
some
the library?
sport equipment.
Yeah.
And library cards are
Yeah.
free because they want people to have access, but they do have, I don't know totally how much equipment they have, but they have started, so you can go in, just like the books and toys, and that there is sport equipment that they can take out on their library card.
okay. But that means like
Getting there.
going to the library and then, but if it's situated by the actual pitch, I mean during the summer holidays when the schools break up, a lot of those school pitches are not used, just lie empty.
Unfortunately, you're preaching to the wrong group here.
All
You're
right.
preaching to the city because, as sports organisations, we're having the same battle and the same arguments
Yeah.
with the city. Why have all these schools empty?
Yeah.
You know, I'm pretty certain that most of the sports clubs around here could have every gym occupied every night
Yeah.
if they were available.
Yeah.
They're just not available.
I
The
know.
joint use agreement allows one school, one night for gym usage. That's it.
So there is
So
another.
the city's a barrier to sport.
So and that's the problem.
Yeah.
It's not the school system. It's the schools hiring of their facilities
Yeah.
is run by the city of Lethbridge,
Okay.
and it's the joint use agreement that they have. It's not really fit for its intended purpose, but it's trying to get change.
Yeah.
And you know, I find it amazing that you have every gym empty during school holidays.
Yeah.
Because we can't get the city to agree with the schools to open them.
And other places in Canada, you have that partnership where you can
Yeah.
use the schools after hours.
And then you have the city build the only leisure centre in the city and make it a members only, where you can't hire the courts.
Yeah.
It's first come, first served.
Yeah. At the other end of the town.
It's so short-sightedness.
There is another actually option for what you're referring to there. It's not in the schools, but the city, I think they just launched this in like September, but they're community play boxes. And so there's a few throughout the city. I know there's one in Nicholas Sharon Park where it has a code on it, like a lockbox on it. But there's a QR code on it, you can sign up online and to be able to access it. And you can open it and it's just filled with equipment. And they were planning to swap out, they were swapping out summer equipment for like more wintry stuff, so I'm not sure what's in it. But that is another option that's completely free, and it is right there at the park. I think there's right now like 3 of them through the city. So that is another good option for that.
Bringing a little bit soccer specific, and I think it helps with your topic. For example, in soccer, we're talking about like how can you develop kids to be better players and be smarter. And we also compare, for example, kids on a country like mine, where we spend a lot of time in soccer in the streets, and we talk about like street soccer, and then I think it found this is still like missing a link that like you can do street soccer outside the street. So for example, on our soccer side, how can, and I'm not going to talk about, for example, about the local club, but it's things that I'm looking forward to do it. How can we have, let's say, like I have, like, and I'm looking towards this right now and progressing. I'm just going to do the application soon to have like our own club in order to do community outreach. How can we have 1 day a week that is just free? Kids can come, and instead of being playing soccer on the streets, they can do street soccer, but in a controlled, in a safe environment. There's no coaching or anything else. So like one of the things, like even if you can't tap on schools, maybe it's a partnership with clubs. It's like, hey, there's a specific day here. So with soccer, with the university side, we can figure out maybe every Sunday morning there's about 2 hours that the kids between this age group here can just go there. We're gonna have someone just to make sure there's a safe environment. Kids can do whatever they want. So now we can bring the free component where kids can do things. In basketball, basketball clubs can do the same. Rugby clubs, every sport club can do the same. And now we create that link where kids can find different areas or different places to just go there for free. And when I talk about this, especially with clubs, it's like, well, what about the cost? And my answer is like, isn't the club a non-profit organization? So technically you're not looking to make that much money. You could break even as far as I'm concerned. You should be able to afford 3-4 hours a week for free to please on a community to just enjoy the sport. That might be a beginning, that might be the start.
But I think that idea is fantastic, and I welcome it. But I think if we look at the societal point of view, and I know exactly what you're talking about. I remember, I think in my last ID camp before I quit, and sat there and I saw these 20 young girls trying to make chasing a university dream. And I say this, and I was told not to say it anymore. When I go on the recruiting trail, I said to parents, if you want your kids to come play for me at the University of Lethbridge and chase that dream, I would say to you, stop, get your kids out of sports, you save yourself so much money. Stop, because I cannot give your kids that much scholarship, right? The amount of money you're spending to practice, it's not worth it to get to my level when I can give you $1,800 a year. That's the reality of sport at this level, right? If you're looking for your child to chase a dream, to pursue excellence, then go for it. It's an investment, it's a long-term investment. But as a societal, right now, I can tell you, we don't practice outside of practice time. You look at the kids, they're not on the street practicing or in the backyard practice. We go to practice to practice. I'm sounding Iverson right now, but that's not my point, that's not the rant, but we don't know how to do it for ourselves. Let's be honest here. It has to start with the parents, the education, the love of the game. We don't even know how to watch a game. We watch for entertainment, right? You watch YouTube now. Kids don't watch 90 minutes of soccer anymore. They go to watch YouTube. They can't sit through 90 minutes of a game in a soccer game. Rugby is the same way.
Yeah.
And if you want to be honest here, when I was coaching the women's side, they don't watch the game. Women do not watch the game. They watch the game more on the guys' side. I can tell, hey, what happened in Europe?
They watch
What?
hockey though.
They do. Right? Like, honestly, that's a cultural thing.
But I would say, like for example, we were talking about, of course, we talk about soccer. You're gonna have hockey on TV, but to access soccer, you have to go through streaming services, right?
Mhm.
So it's easier to watch hockey because you will be on TV. They don't watch soccer when they parent you, especially if you're like 12 years old, when your parents have to buy the streaming services,
And I
they
don't
just
even
won't
think
buy
they
it.
watch on the women's side. They don't watch that. Let's be honest, there's no women hockey on TV. That's the other issue. Pro, right?
That's another session.
Yeah. Like, let's,
That would be an interesting session.
like, if you talk about barriers, our 16-year-old daughter loves soccer. She's 16-year-old. There's 8 girls playing house league at 16-year-old soccer in this city of 100,000. Can somebody explain that to me? How does that make sense?
It's because they quit. Because
Exactly.
it's not enjoyable.
But that's
It's a
what I'm
controlled
saying.
environment, and then like on and on and on.
Do we care to raise women in this environment for girls to play? As a society, we should be promoting this. We should have girls house league for girls. At 16-year-old, my daughter is tiny. She can handle it, but the guys are like, I'm looking up to these kids I'm coaching, right? And that's a huge barrier. We know that if it's not a welcome and intimidating experience, they're not gonna come back. There's tons, I can back you up with data all night long. We know this.
So with that, is it okay if I?
Yeah, of course.
So for helping people, newcomers come, your perspective is for men, and now you're talking about women and girls. So how is it to include girls as newcomers coming from sometimes places where they're not encouraged to, or culturally that's not what is expected? What do you suggest that we can do to encourage young girls or women to be involved when it's typically not something they've done?
I think it's probably create the social network first, that kind of foundation, because if you've created either a peer support, or you created that friendship circle, is then you then have someone who does play sport and say, hey, why don't you come along? I'm going to the soccer club this evening. Why don't you come along, and you can just sit and you can watch, and then it's like, oh, maybe the next time it's like, oh, do you want to join in? And it's that if they have that social network first, then it's easier to get them to come in. There's also we just been chatting before I came here with a lady who runs our girls club, and it's on a Friday afternoon, and it's the aim of the girls club is to empower them and build and give them that confidence building, and then expose them and introduce them to other community services, for example, like the sports. And because they are a little bit hesitant, they're a little bit shy, as you suggested, some of the cultures that they come from, they're not front and centre, because they're a girl. And the whole idea of this girls' club that we're running is to try and break down some of those barriers and build that confidence, and eventually introduce them to so they're no longer in our girls' club, they're in another girls' club within the community, or whether it's a sports club or a social club or whatever, is that they're then not reliant on it. So that's one of the things that we've seen, we identified as a gap in its how the system. So yeah, and we had partnerships with the Pronghorns, who did a swimming club purely for girls, which was really successful, and particularly in swimming costumes for Muslim girls. That was provided, and that was a hugely successful club that we did with volunteers from the Pronghorns, and looking to instigate again after the new year, and so we're looking to do that again. And that was a hugely successful. So in centres like that, where it's I used to call it suck and see. So I went, and it was because it was scuba diving, and it was called suck and see. And you went, you sucked, and then you saw, and then you decided whether you liked it or not. And I didn't like it. I was claustrophobic under the water. But yeah, I wouldn't say there's lots of things, but there are those little steps that we can introduce to people so that they feel comfortable with it, and then they can partake in it. And I think schools is quite crucial to that. So it's not hugely reliant on sporting clubs, and not hugely reliant on immigrant services, but that whole mandatory sports at schools, and introducing to them, and then exposing them to the after school clubs, if there's any after school activities, or exposing them to other clubs which they can go, whether it's so that providing them with the opportunity, providing them information. I think that's it. So we we'll talk about, like, we're talking about barriers. So Keegan and I had this conversation over the telephone. So when the schools break up, we book a pitch here. It's either on a Tuesday or Thursday. So and we do Winston Churchill on there, and we do a soccer club for. It's pretty much anyone. So it's predominantly aimed at newcomers, but we have street kids will turn up. We've even had senior citizens have turned up, and we get about 60 kids, and it's a completely zero barrier event, and you just kind of like turn up, and it involves us with a ball, and we just throw it onto the pitch. We go, right, on you go, and they love it. They absolutely love it. We have to remove. We have some vests. We have to remove number 10 and number 7 because that starts fights. Because everyone wants to be Messi, and everyone wants to be Ronaldo. So 10 and 7 vests are gone.
Or just make everybody number 7s and 10s.
Yeah.
So I get a bunch of them.
Yeah, and
Yeah, because it doesn't matter as long as you got the right color, right?
yeah, and they absolutely love it. And after, but once the school starts, it stops, and there isn't anything beyond that. And when the winter comes in, it's the access to an indoor area to do it. But it's hugely successful, and it's because there's no registration, there's no form filling, there's no waivers to sign. It's like everyone's
It's not online.
everyone kind of like comes on the understanding that it's all safe play. We have some staff there to provide some supervision. We've had some coaches who have turned up and just done volunteered their time to just do some skills and techniques. We turn up with a big cooler full of water and some chopped up watermelons and things like that, and they absolutely love it.
One of the things that should be specific when I talk about sports here, I'm talking about the women's side. I'm a women's soccer coach here at the University of Lethbridge, and since I decided to really start volunteering with soccer in Canada, I decided to only coach women's because the boys, they all get the interest of every single coach that wants to pursue a career. So I decided to do women's, we decided to do girls, so from U14 girls, and I think a little bit of answer to your question is one of the things, and that's like a little bit of data that shows that girls quit sports because of the environment, right? So how we turn that environment to make a safe environment, a more comfortable environment for girls, it is to be coached by another female. And then we tap another big issue, right? We go like the egg, the chicken or the egg. We need more girls enjoying playing sports in order to create female coaches, and in order to make female coaches, we make them enjoying playing the sport. So like it's interesting that you mentioned the pronghorns, because I'm trying to do the same. So that's what I said, like it's very in green area. We're gonna be creating a club for us in Orleans. I was talking to Keegan about that, but we're already gonna be offering soccer in indigenous communities starting in January, right? So now we get all our girls to coach those girls on the indigenous communities. And one of the things that I want to start doing even in this winter, it is to start offering soccer to newcomers as well, and having those girls coming from different backgrounds being coached by other girls, and they're not only gonna be coaching, right? They're gonna like, okay, I've been coaching for this random girl here, but like, oh, she plays for university. I might be able to see her play in the summer, and now becomes a relation. We talk about like girls that don't watch sports on TV, but here's an opportunity that they can, over the course of the summer and fall, see their coaches playing that game as well, and creating that relations like, I wanna be like that player, I wanna be like my coach. And now we're keeping those girls more in sports, they feel safe, it is relatable, right? Like as much as we love the sports, as much as we coach the soccer, as much as we enjoy coach female soccer, I don't know how a cramp feels, right? I bet a 12, 13-year-old girl is not gonna come to me as like, hey coach, I feel horrible because I just got my first period. They're not gonna see this, they're gonna suck it up, and I bet it happens with you. Like there's a dude, there's an old parent, or my friend's dad coaching the team. I'm not gonna go to him and say like, hey, that just happened. So now we're having another female that they might be comfortable, like, and even for a man, there's a huge component, like, anyways, we're talking about education on the youth system. We have a bunch of girls that are like, might not be performing well with something outside of sports, right? It could be a biological change that we don't understand, and some of those environments, why you not put enough effort? I'm gonna make you run laps. She's gonna be quitting because now she doesn't understand what is happening to her, or she might understand and she might feel like she's not comfortable enough with that, and then she'll quit the sport. She'll quit the sports. And now we're putting females that understand why those biological changes are happening. One of the biggest dropouts it is 8 to 12. So when they hit the 11, 12 years old, there's the biggest dropout in women's sports. And then when they hit the high school, is the second dropout because there's more social component now they can drive. But the biggest piece of the pyramid, it's 8 to 12. And those are the key ages when the motor skills are being developed, the social skills are being developed, and when the physical aspects, like their biological, are changing so much, they need a safe environment. So creating environments where they're being coached by female, and that's when me as a university program, I have a part in the community, I have a responsibility in the community to, when I'm recruiting players, I'm letting them know, by the way, you come in here and there's a volunteer and there's a community outreach component that you require to do. I don't like that awesome, you can go somewhere else. So now we're bringing people, not only good players, but we're bringing good people that are willing to give back to the community, willing to work with the community, in order to develop the female aspect of soccer. We're talking about my sports, right? So now we have a responsibilities. The players from day one knows they have a responsibility, and now girls are growing up being coaches by not, and of course the volunteers, they have the best of the intentions, but some of them never play sport, and now we've been coaching someone that played the sports at so far the highest level in Canada, and by a female, and that's when we keep a female, younger female in sports.
Yeah. Also kind of building on like newcomer women and girls kind of from my conversations and work, like one, there isn't anything really in Lethbridge, so we're working on a swimming program and a couple different opportunities, but having female only coaches, like having women there, blocking out the windows, so it's like a completely safe space. Also, like you mentioned, safety is a concern, so they've mentioned parents sometimes are concerned about sending their kids to a place because they're not sure if it will be safe, so whether that's being transparent about accessing the facility or what it kind of looks like, or giving them an opportunity to come see it before, but being really clear, there won't be men present, only females are allowed, those kinds of things as well. And then my mom taught at the English additional language program at Churchill, and they actually worked with them about what programs they wanted to try, because they suggested some sports that they thought they would be interested in, and they were too sexy. So there were certain sports that weren't culturally appropriate, they didn't feel comfortable doing, so actually having those conversations with them about what they want to do.
And with that, and so just physical literacy, like I see a huge disconnect, kids, that it's like they're being pushed into sports without having physical literacy, and it's like, but you need that to be successful in anything. So any suggestions on how for physical literacy, because they don't have it?
The problem is, sorry.
Go ahead.
The problem is the early specialization, right? So when we talk about early specialization, and it is a model here in North America and in Canada, and I think we kind of like took that a little bit, because I think hockey is a big like full-time program from early ages, right? So, but hockey, like you're skating, you work with your hand, physical literacy. The most important component, it's being a multi-sport athlete. It's doing multi-sports. We just literally
Talked about it. Yeah.
talked about it, and instead of organization pushing to their specialization, you have to do more with me. I'm coaching soccer, you have to only do soccer with the 6 years olds. You only can do soccer. You're gonna be doing soccer 4 times a week. First of all, that is amount of appropriate amount per age that you can be doing those sports, right? And there's tons of studies about like how much hours you can be doing the sports. So on our case, and I can see this in soccer, because first of all, there's like, let's compare with basketball or rugby or badminton. We do most of our coordination with the hands, so there's not many sports that you have to be coordinated with a foot, right? So now you not only kick a ball, you control the ball, you run, you change directions. I get players that are really good with fundamentals, but the motor coordination, it is horrible, right? So now it creates more injuries, and it doesn't matter if they have a good pass or a good in running. I see parents putting kids on track and field to get running techniques in order to have a better shot in soccer, but they just can't run to point A to point B. They can't change directions. That's the most important things in soccer. So avoiding early specialization, driving away from the early specialization model when we talk about the golden age, right? The golden age for motor skills, because kids start, you have the growth sports like, so 8 to 12, and then boys and girls differs a little bit, but 8 to 12 is the golden age for motor skills. That age, that 8 to 12 is the most important time of their lives, where they should be doing 3-4 different sports, because basketball is gonna give them a piece of that, soccer is gonna give a piece of that, basketball is gonna give a piece of that, rugby, swimming, and that's what the model that like people start realizing, but we're still pushing here in Canada, where because we're in a pay-to-pay system, so more you stay with me, more you pay, and I see, and I'm gonna use hockey as well. I see like a lot of hockey environments where they push those kids to not doing any other sports, to be on ice 3 to 4 times a week, and then the kid might decide to do different sports, and then the motor skills. There's so much I can change when they're adults, right? So we should be, as a community, giving incentive on communities, clubs, community centers, whatever we're doing, to embrace and give space for kids to do different sports through the week. That's the best way for them to develop their physical literacy. There's nothing else. It's not competitive, it's not extra time, it's not doing track and field, it's not hitting the gym. I've seen some programs in soccer where they're taking their age groups, like they're 10, 11 years old, and they're doing like twice a week, an hour at the gym. Why don't you use those 2 hours a week to do different sports? It's gonna be way more valuable for them. They can get stronger when they're 15, 16, but they cannot get their motor skills when they're 15, 16 as much as they could get when they're like 9 and 10 years old.
I'll piggyback on that. I think school has a huge role to play. We need to advocate that in our school system because, like I said, in the Northwest Territory, we use the same curriculum as Alberta. So in the fall you play volleyball, then you transition to basketball, and so on and so on, right? And I played all of it, like all of that sport, and it's amazing to think that me being in my mind, I was way better. So it's, but I had a benefit from coming from a small town. You can attest to this. I played. I got to play because without me, there would be no team because by numbers. And this is a benefit, I tell you, because I'm a high performance guy. Let's be clear. I'm a high performance guy. I love the competition, and I only want to work. I really love working with the best athlete. But then I realized when I started coaching at the high school for my wife there, I love badminton because everybody gets 21 points. Whether you suck or you're great, you get 21 points. Now you're that kid who is awful and you're playing basketball, you might not even get into the game because the depth chart on that is way low. I firmly believe school sports should not be for the elite. It should be for those kids who's exploring, get an opportunity to develop that physical literacy you're talking about. We talked about participation in my, no one had a clue what that is. It's been so old with Hal and Joanne. Those of you who grew up in Canada, right?
Some of you won't know
Yeah.
that.
Yeah, but I used to love that. How many push-ups, sit-ups, jumping jacks. That little badge was huge for me because that drove the competitor in me, right? But we don't promote that anymore, right? We don't promote the ability for those kids to go and develop, right? We want an already made high-performing athlete at a high school level. I'm telling you, high school level is not the be-all and end-all. Yes, they're on their way, but that is not the be-all and end-all, and it shouldn't be. And we treat it now like they're off-season training for the high schools, but is that really where we want it to be? Right? As we now pre-select teams before you even get to try out. Let's be honest about our system. Right? We can talk about physical literacy all we want, but until we change that, it's not going to go anywhere, right?
I think linking to what can be done here, and if we're talking, for example, about newcomers and an immigration system, is we need to take advantage that is a small town. We we need to take advantage that it's easy accessible to immigration services and in schools and university, and collaborative create a multi-sport program where it's affordable or free. But like I just mentioned that, like for me, we as a university have a duty to give back to the community, and if there's a connection between those resources and schools, we definitely like it's like I also had this problem when I was in Manitoba, because everybody has a reason to not do things, but nobody sits down like, let's do it, okay? Like here's the end goal, we're gonna do it. How can we sit here and find a way to do it? It was always like, okay, let's sit here. I was like, can't do it because of this, you can't do it because of that, right? So as a small community, I find it's supposed to be easier to sit down in a room like this. It's like, here's the end goal. We have immigration systems, we have indigenous communities, we have our own community. We need multi-sports accessible. It's free or cheap, grants, whatever needs to be, whatever we need to do in order to provide those kids multi-sports. Like, what is the age group? It's 4 to 6. It is 4 to 8. Is it 6 to 12? Here's the age group. Here's where we're gonna do it. What can I provide? What sports program? what he can provide? What schools can provide? Let's put a resource together. 100% you're gonna find ways, in not only to create better, because you're talking about like, realistically, those girls are gonna be playing university. There's no much money. Like they shouldn't be spending money to watch a good university and play the sport. They should be playing sport to be a better person, better people, integrated in the community, healthier, right? So like if you're playing sports and if you're playing any level of sports, and now if you have the moral literacy, that you have like least chance to injure, you live longer, you're living healthier, you're happier, right? We talk about like stress levels, anxiety levels in kids, right? Like we're talking about like with 2023, 2024, and now we're dealing not only with adults or young adults suffering anxiety or stress. We're talking about like 11, 12, 13-year-old, especially girls with social media, suffering that level of anxiety, stress, right? So now we can create that environment where we're just making better people, we're just making healthier people, and we're just integrating the community. And it doesn't matter how we do it, it has to be done.
Yeah.
You have a question? Yeah.
Question. Sorry. Okay, so for like, oh shit, I had it when I'm talking about it. Okay. The people and like the kiddos. Okay, so I run a sports program, and it's free, and it's mostly like new to Canada students that come, and it's for like boys and girls, but I only get boys. Is part of it.
Yeah.
But on like Tuesdays we play basketball, and I maybe have like 10 kids show up. And then Wednesdays I make them play volleyball, and like I have 5 kids that show up. They really don't like volleyball. And on Thursdays I play soccer, and I have like 25 to 30 kids in my gym. I have a very small gym. And so like getting like, do you have like any ideas of how to get these boys who just want to play soccer interested in other sports? Or should I just change
I
it
don't
to
know
like,
you have soccer players.
Yeah.
Yeah.
or should I just change it
Bad
to
crowd.
only playing soccer every day? Like,
Have you tried doing like a little bit of soccer every day, and a little bit of basketball every day, and a little bit
Like
of
the
volleyball every
sports.
day?
I have 2 hours.
Oh.
So it's like I have 2 hours where they can play sports, and it's usually like it's from 3 to 5. So I'm just like, I let them go. I kind of like open the gym and I'm like, go, you know?
That's a good idea.
Her idea.
Yeah.
Her idea.
Yeah.
You have 2 hours. You have 2 hours. What is the age group, by the way?
High school.
High
so,
school.
Yeah.
Okay. So let's take in consideration that 2 hours is a lot, right? It is a lot. Nobody plays for 2 hours. That's the perfect deal. It's like, hey, Mondays and Wednesdays we're gonna do half volleyball and half basketball, and the other days we're gonna be doing this, and you integrate those sports for them. And of course, if we're talking about a high school age group, that's typically the age that they are specializing into sports. So if we're talking about 15, 16, 17s, they might just like one sport, and that's completely fair. You're not gonna change that. If you're talking about 12, 11, 13, 14, it's easier. If you're talking about 6, 7, 8, 9, they don't even care what you're doing as long as you're running around, right? So you could do that, or you just could still provide, because it's a high school, it's a high school age, right? Like you're not gonna make a 16-year-old boy or girl change or like more the sports than another. You provide the hour, they do whatever they want to do with this. If they're younger, highly recommend do this. If they're like elementary school kids, if they're like under 12, make them do other sports. If they're past that, if they're high school age, as long as they're happy, who cares, right?
Same kids show up, like the volleyball and basketball kids come to the soccer too, or are they different kids? Same kids.
Yeah, I would say volleyball, such a technical sport. If you can't serve, you can't start the game.
Yeah.
Right?
Skills
It's
development.
Make it smaller.
Yeah,
You
you
don't have
could
to
also
follow
like
the
some
rules.
guest coaches come.
But you don't have to play volleyball. You can stay like you can throw it and catch it. Like
Yeah.
you can modify.
Yeah, you don't have to follow the
Yeah,
rules.
you don't
Oh,
have
no,
to
we
follow.
don't follow
Oh.
rules. we don't. We have our own house rules that
Yeah.
we made up.
Yeah, you could have like a sampling day and different coaches come. So like 1 week the rugby team comes, 1 week the volleyball from the
Yeah.
college comes. So then you have and bring some of the athletes, and then they
Yeah.
see them as role models, and then there are more numbers to play, and there is a bit more of encouragement, and then it takes time. So maybe once the college comes, then there is more interest. Then they tell their friends, hey, the college was here and we played. You should come next week when we play volleyball. Like, they're going to be there again. And it was a lot more fun than it has been, or different, maybe different strategies like that. Or bring in a different club, like a different sport organization to introduce. And they might be able to teach it in a different way than you can.
Like if the kids love soccer, then sometimes I'm guessing it's most gonna be boys, right? Play walking soccer. Get the girls to come, because then it slows down, right? And it's not pure
Right.
athleticism.
Yeah.
That is to now you're bringing the level that anybody can play, right? So just modify it, so to make it more inclusive.
You might not make the soccer boys play different sports, but with some of those ideas, you might increase the other people coming to those sports. Right?
That's right.
I really like the idea of like maybe including the college or other teams around, and just go there for a day. It might make it fun.
Also, like, because there is only boys, like a women and girls only time might be good. Like, I understand you want to make it open to everyone, and you only have 2 hours, but maybe the first hour once a week just to start is only girls. And like, they know you're the coach, it maybe is more welcoming, or different opportunities. We're gonna have scorekeeping, girls can come and do that, or just something else where it's not, and then they can see it being less competitive than maybe what they expect.
Are you playing full gym for soccer?
Yeah.
Just play small.
Yeah, no, it's a small gym. Like it's
Yeah,
like it's
but
like
just play half of it, like play small-sided games,
Yeah.
so more people can play.
Yeah.
Right? So that way, less running.
Yeah, yeah.
Right.
It's not like it's not a full gym. It's only
It's
like
like a basketball size.
yeah.
But yeah,
You can use 2 halves and
Yeah,
play
exactly.
small side. I bet the guys will be like pretty goalies and
Yeah.
things like this, but
Can you do
And
other activities, like skipping, like boxer skip, and like it's cheap to get skipping ropes and, or things like that, like would they do that, like, cause you can tell them it'll improve their soccer.
true.
keep them in soccer, okay?
So kind of knowing how. Oh, you go.
Sorry, I was just going to say, have you asked them? Because
Yeah.
I mean, you're doing
No,
you're doing
I've asked them, and every time I'm like, hey, should we like try this new thing? They're like, we should just play soccer.
I would too.
or
And then
maybe
I'm like, what if we tried like doing soccer like this today? They're like, we should just play soccer. And I'm like, okay.
As long as they're happy.
yeah, you're doing an amazing job. It's like if it's 3 nights,
That's
at
good.
2 hours a night. I mean, that's commendable. So I take my hat off to you for at least providing something. Perhaps make them earn it. Make them play volleyball before soccer. And it's like, you're going to have to earn this. We're going to, if you've got 2 hours, we're right. I can only go from my from when I was growing up, it was just soccer, and even at school they tried to introduce things like volleyball, badminton, and things like that. But it was just like that was getting in the way of soccer, and that was just me. And there were people who were pretty talented in those particular sports. Even in the gym, I was just looking at the five. We used to play five-a-side, so I was looking at the soccer nets that was at the other end of the ball, and when we used to finish doing that, then they used to say, right, who wants to hang around and play? And everyone used to hang around, and we used to pull those nets out. And then, well, I take my hat off to you. You're doing a great job.
It's not an easy thing to do. What other sports are people involved in?
I'm a high school teacher and I run the athletics program at our school. Actually, I was going to ask you too. I actually noticed that we've got some kids, like we're a small school, and so we've got sports up and running. So I look over at John and what he's doing, which is amazing. But like I've got some immigrant kids. Well, we've got quite a few immigrant kids at our school, and even like kids who don't show up. But then we do the Terry Fox run. I had this one kiddo in grade 11 put on the shortest shorts ever and like truck around Henderson Lake twice. And I'm like, buddy, why are you not doing cross country? He's like, I don't know. But I think, it's that factor. Like I think it's the transportation. It's the cost. The cost isn't very high, and we can also eliminate the cost. But I think it's the idea of, I can't get there, or my parents can't pick me up after, or like mom and dad are working, but they don't, but the kids don't share that information. It's just like, that's okay, right? And it's like, well, clearly you can run.
Yeah.
You put on the shortest shorts ever, and you took off around the lake like 3 or 4 times, and you were happy doing that. So why are you not doing cross country with us? Because you're a social kid, like do it.
Yeah.
But so I'm not sure how to help these kiddos, or and maybe it's not worrying about that, and like I liked what you were saying. I know that Fred, you had a vision for that before. Thiago, like if they're even having some sort of like connection with the university or college, where I don't know if any of the sports teams would want to come and just like have an after school kick around, or because I know that my plate is already very, very full with just trying to organize the organized sports and teach and do my job that I'm actually paid for. I don't know, but I don't know how that could come together. I think it's a great vision that you have, and promoting volunteer and like share your skills with the community, right? You're trying to raise up these great players, and if kids can learn from these athletes who are just a step ahead of them, and then it could be free, right? Parents don't have a huge responsibility. There's no commitment in terms of like these kiddos. Anybody can come. I don't know how that would work, or how that looks, or
And
how
it's
it works.
perfect because they're already there, right? So there's no transportation issue because the kids are already at school.
But like you said, this child was athletic, like maybe is interested, and like maybe the peer mentorship thing, like you said. But like Fred, from your experience, what was something that, or someone that made joining sport like welcoming and inclusive, or seem at least welcoming and inclusive, that you felt comfortable to join?
I was able to fit in, accepted through sports. That was really big, and I was good at it, right? And I was able to show off, right? And that's you talk about that confidence and of that, because then I was able to shine, because I was not the kid that couldn't speak the language, right? Or I was poor because my mom and dad work all the time, right? I had another identity, right? So and that was huge. And for me, it was the fact that it was able to be with my friends and make new friends, and that the sense of belonging and acceptance is really important. And know coming to a new environment, doesn't speak the language, and I was one of 3 Asian kids that's in the school of 400, right? So that was very different. We had a lot of Inuits and all the indigenous people there, and like that was normal, right? So that was really, really different. But yeah, I think sport in itself, in terms of school, I'll go to the grave to say that it's important. We need to protect it for our kids in order. We now, because our son is in that small school, he wants to play basketball. He's grade 9 now, and he's we don't have a team. So we're trying to find a team for him to break into around the city. It's impossible. It's the system. It's really heartbroken for me to see that in a school, in a town that loves basketball. This is the mecca of basketball down here. That my son, because he's going to a small school, cannot play basketball, and there is no basketball for a 15-year-old kid, 14-year-old kid to play basketball. LNBA stopped. Where else he's gonna play? The Y, he's playing the pickup ball. He goes there 5 hours on the weekend, every day on a weekend if we let him, right? And it's great, but I don't understand how that could be. And then I'm not even talking about does he have the skills level or not skill level. I'm just talking there's no opportunity for him. And I believe sport, there's a level, you know this very well. I believe there's a level for everyone, right? Just because we're at the university level, that's one level. But there's the college, there's this, there's a level for everything, for everybody. And that's the way it should be, right? Competing is me playing you, I just want to beat you. That's it, right? That's competing. Doesn't matter, you don't need to be at the Olympic level to compete. You could be that first person, I just want to beat you. I'll say this to my kids too. If I'm playing you, I would still want to beat you. Because that's competition, right? And it doesn't have to be at the elite level. It's at any level. Right? So
awesome. So we know that Lethbridge is a super diverse community. As you can see here by our welcome, this is all the most commonly spoken languages in Lethbridge. So we do have some posters if anyone wants to take them for your office or anything. But so John, based off your experience, do you think that having like a targeted event for like specific groups, so for example, we're having a Ukrainian tri-speed skating event for like that a sport organization is offered to host, or do you think that just in general having a newcomer tri-ed event would be, because I know like we have the interpreters coming, and then a couple Syrian families are coming, so now we got an Arabic translator coming.
So I'm hesitant to give an answer to that because I'm a great believer in integration.
Yeah.
And having a specific only event for a particular cohort is
Isolating.
Is in essence creating a barrier, which is what we're trying to reduce. So I'm all for integration and where people can connect and where they can develop a social network, where they can and it's with their peers. So I personally I wouldn't be a fan of a specific targeted group event.
What about if it was like an introduction? So, for
Yeah.
example, I know we talked about there's a try basketball,
Yeah.
and then they went and it was a tryout,
Yeah.
not a try basketball.
Yeah.
So if it was an opportunity to just try it and then introduce them to the sport.
Yeah, and I think if I recall last year there was something held at the Soccer Association where it was a bit of a community event and then everyone got to go around and try all these different sports that was on there. Like things like that.
Sport fest.
Yes, that's the word. Yeah.
That's us.
Thanks for saying that, Keegan.
We did that.
But things like that is amazing. And if there's, I remember speaking to Susan about it, and Susan was going to bring some interpreters there as well to the event so that we can introduce it. And then we can help with connecting individuals to that event and advertising it, and then we try to encourage independence as well and self-advocacy, self-empowerment. but sometimes you just need a little helping hand, it's just to get them across the threshold, and then well, things like that are perfect. Perhaps more of them. So I remember having a conversation with Susan about there was that one, and then perhaps as we approach those winter sports, there was another one held, and so there was one just before the summer breaks to promote some of the summer activities, and then there was one in the autumn to promote those winter activities, or those clubs that are still going to continue.
Right.
So that's what I'd be in favour of, but cohort only, I'm not a big fan of.
Yeah, no, makes sense.
Shameless plug, Sportfest is on May 11th, we just confirmed the date, so put that in your calendars.
Yeah, it is. So and then talking about like kind of co-creating for programs, how do you suggest that sport organizations go to connect with different groups to either decrease barriers for them and create more opportunities?
So this question, there's a lady, Laura Branner, and this question, she would love this question, and she always talks about co-creating programs, and it's actually speaking to your customers, speaking to your kiddos, and not necessarily the parents, because the parents may have a different perspective, but it's speaking to who your participants, and then together coming up with what you want to do, and we try to do that with our various programs, and we conduct focus groups, discussions, surveys, and try to gather in a whole lot of information from all perspectives, and then trial it, get some feedback, how did that go, and it's almost like a pilot program, and then just continually improve it, and co-creating things, because you get their buy-in. They feel like that's the aim, and then once you've got that buy-in, then you kind of got them. It's that little hook, that motivator, that they themselves want to see it be successful, because that was their ideas and things. So
Co-creating.
Yeah, co-creating. Laura would have loved that question. She would have nailed that answer better than me.
Awesome.
With that, the co-creation, what about people or kids that, like, Fred, you said that you were competitive and that you were good at things so that you could shine. What about those kids that you want to get involved that are not good and that don't have those skills? Anybody's got ideas of how to, ask them, but how to get them kind of.
There's space for everybody in every single sports.
But
if you build it, they will come.
Like in schools and stuff, like I'm sure, like there's the kids that hang out at the back wall. Like, how do you get them involved? Like that's the question.
Because our Barons Club, we do coaching for beginners that have never picked a racket up before, as well as intermediate players and advanced juniors.
So how do you get those kids to come in when they haven't? Because so often sports, you have to have some exposure when they're like 5 or 6, and they get good, and then they're the ones. But how do you encourage
that's
that?
the problem. With our badminton club, it's always the parents that bring in the kids. We don't know if the kids have specifically asked their parents if they want to come to badminton or if they've just been brought. But we do try and encourage them, and I've always been one to advocate, and I've had this argument with our coaches in our club because they just want to coach. But my background is I've never had a coaching lesson in my life. I've played for 50 years badminton, and I've always argued rep play. There's no point learning to play if there's nowhere for the kids to go and play once they've learned. And I actually learned to play badminton through playing the game, not being coached it. So we are trying to introduce that drop-in now for different levels of kids as well, just to come along and play. Forget about the coaching, forget about just come and have fun. Get the shuttle over the net and enjoy it.
Yeah, I think if I can jump in on this one, is so when I was, we have beautiful parks here, right? You see, we put up disc golf
Yeah.
on campus. Plenty of people using it because it's accessible, it's easy. We got a stadium that we use 3 months of the year. It doesn't open till 4 o'clock in the afternoon. What's it doing closed the rest of the time? Oh, because it's a safety issue, because we're worried about people getting wrecked. But I've been around other communities, it's open, people go in there, walk in the morning, they use, I think it's comes down to that. If you have access, if you talk about the bags of equipment, yeah, it's gonna get wrecked, right? It is, we know it's gonna get wrecked. But that kid wrecking that ball could be a superstar one day. That's what we want, it's a philosophy. Like, are we committed to this free play model? Or are we really committed to just coach play?
I will admit, Canada is better than some other countries
Yeah.
at free play. I come from the United Kingdom, and I can guarantee every school sports field has a 3-meter high fence around it.
Yes.
And locked.
I used to jump those fences every single year.
Yeah.
I'm not even joking
Yeah.
because in Brazil is the same thing. We used to just
But
jump
look at
it.
the skills that you got learning how to jump
Jump.
the fence.
Yeah.
But
High jump.
Yeah, but
that was my point, right? Like we define like what's bad, like look, who kid is bad and good, and we go back to that question of like a motor sport when you're developing the motor skills component. I bet if a kid has, doesn't matter which sport they play, if you're developing kids with better motor coordination, and you can pick up any sports. Like I don't skate, but if you bring me here like twice a week for 3 weeks in a row, I'll be skating because them motor skills, you create facility to learn. It's like when you develop your brain and you have facility to learn. For example, if you speak 2 different languages, you have the facility to learn different other languages. It's the same thing in your body. So if you have the motor skills when you're growing up, when you're 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, if you decide to shift to badminton, I can learn badminton. I can learn how to skate. I'm not gonna be a professional. I'm not gonna be playing AAA hockey, but I bet I'll be able to safely skate and play any level that will make me happy. So it's like instead of finding like okay, like awesome, we get those kids, we can get them play. We just have to find a system and a model that expose those kids to be comfortable doing different stuff. That when they're growing up, it's gonna be easier. If they decide to play table tennis, decide to play tennis or hockey, it becomes an easy transferable because they have the more skills necessary to learn more.
But what I was trying to get at is that when we came to Canada, we were absolutely amazed when we went to our local school
Yeah, it was
and we could walk right onto the playing field any time of the day. And so, you know, we took our kids to play ice hockey, football, but soccer, but we took them, we played baseball, we did basketball there outside during the summer because the outside field was accessible. And that's where I think Canada is good in that instance, but it's the inside facilities that you can't get into.
We have about 15 minutes, so we'll open up the floor if there's any questions from the audience, or I got a couple more, but.
So when you talk about inclusivity, have you tried to talk to the school districts and everything about trying to open up that free play and try to model it like for all the kids in the elementary levels to start? Because my son is autistic and I'm here representing sort of neurodivergent, and we've heard nothing about inclusivity in 3 years that I've been here, living here. So we even tried to do the LCI basketball camp last year, and it was totally competitive. My son, so I was the only parent that stayed out of all those kids. Stayed with my son because he looked at this and was like, oh no. But he volunteered. He's like, I want to try basketball. And I'm like, if you want to try it, we'll try it. I'll stay with you. And I stayed with him. He was good. He could hit a shot no matter where. He had trouble with the dribbling, and then when it came down to the last 10 minutes of game, it was too competitive. He bowed out, and he's like, I want to go home. He's like, I can't do this. And I'm like, well, you can still participate by encouraging your team, right? Like standing on the side saying like, good job, right? But we've heard nothing about inclusivity coming from a neurodivergent perspective. So I'm just wondering, have you tried to approach the schools more to say anything, or? you know, in any of your platforms, have you seen a lot of neurodivergency?
Well, it's I'm in a unique position. Mary Dyke, who was a colleague, she just recently retired. This is her forte. So I've learned from her.
Yeah.
She'll be here in 2 sessions.
Yes.
Yeah.
So she can speak to that. Because she started with the soccer program with that, and around here, she's on Ian Bennett, who took over her position there, is now leading the charge in that. So from that perspective, yeah, we know. I always refer back to Mary, right, in terms of that stuff, and I know she's been making some push.
Yeah.
At the provincial level as well, and she said we had some girls from the university soccer team when I was coaching, probably still does, that's worked with her on that program.
Yeah.
But for basketball, I'm not sure. Maybe someone in the audience can speak to that, but I'm not sure about that.
All I know is that if people came at like a lower level of lower expectations on kids like that, and if you started them right and encouraged them, you would be amazed at the output that you could get if you gave them the time.
Sure.
So
Yeah, I met with someone from Inclusion Alberta, and they said that like sport is something that they're still trying to navigate because there is like a lot of pushback from sport organizations, and they've had an easier transition with the individual sports, like dance or like badminton, different things like that, and then like building into like trying to work with that, but understanding that like if they're given the same opportunity, they can participate in the same capacity. Just when you remove them and exclude them, then they don't get those opportunities to grow and be comfortable and confident in those spaces.
Yeah.
I think like the baseball program, the Challenger baseball is awesome, and like the city's new skating one is awesome. So it's just like getting more opportunities. And like I know like we met to talk about like having like that opportunity to show up early and see what the space is like.
And then again, like in our society, there are so many people here in Lethbridge and surrounding area that don't know that all the dots that connect that you could get your kiddos out to, because it's not communicated enough. So,
I'd like to say a little something or a question. So I work at the Interface Food Bank, totally non-related to sports, but I was so interested in coming and learning more because I run the resource room there, and I try to provide families with referrals to different community organizations and programs. So I was so excited about hearing that because we have a lot of newcomers, and I see a lot in-depth cases with newcomers and how they're reacting, and I see the children with them, and I'm so excited to learn more about all of these programs. But I have a question since she left, but she mentioned this boy that he was so good at that one sport, but he didn't want to pursue it more. And for me, I think myself as a newcomer and seeing more newcomers, I know that we come from different places with war zones, violence everywhere, and the kid sees his parents are just barely making it through life here in Canada with new community, and there's a lot of challenges. So is there any program that will just motivate the parents to participate with their children? So if there is something like that in the community, this would be great, because the children will get to see their parents finally having a part in sports. Is there a program like that?
We do have a program, but it's for kids who are 5 and under. It's a physical literacy program, but it's for their parents to come and play with the kids. So work on their all of the games and equipment is to tailor to their physical literacy and fundamental movement skills. And it's free. It runs twice a week. So once a week at Service Sports Center, and then once a week at Emmanuel Church. But I can send you that information as well. It's on our website.
Can I speak to, as an immigrant child, I've gone highest level when parents have never come to see me play. Different philosophy. different way of thinking. They'll be more willing. They look at themselves as, I'll make you some money, I'll buy some equipment, but you do it yourself. And from that perspective, I'm grateful for my parents, but that's a big ask. Truly, because we were worried about survival more than anything, and if truly the immigrant mentality is make money as much as you can, because this is why this country is amazing for that, and for that, and so you work.
But eventually, grown-ups too need sports.
Yeah.
And they need to feel like they are part of the community.
Oh, I
We
don't
as
argue.
immigrants, we
Yeah.
work so hard to
Yes.
provide for our kids,
Exactly.
but then we forget ourselves
That's
in the,
right.
in the meanwhile. So
Yeah.
there is a program that will encourage parents to be there for their kids as
Yes.
themselves also.
It's not necessarily sport, but one thing that you could look into is the Nature Center has a lot of outdoor programs that are kind of like that bridge to sport. So like outdoor, I mean, you go out into the coulees to look at birds, but you're also hiking because you have to get to the places, right? So a lot of the programs at Helen Schuler would kind of also be that very first introduction, because just to do that, you also need to be physical.
I did come here 8 years ago without kids. Like my reality that I was probably working like 120 hours a week for at least like a couple of years. So if I had a kid, that'll definitely be a career. But I think on my part, if I look, for example, in my reality, if I had a kid and we talk about like connecting parents and kids and having that time where like we just bring, I think one could, there's of course there's 100 different solutions, but I see and to link what we're talking here, I feel like if you create spaces for those kids to have easy access to sports, those parents, they're gonna come and they're gonna watch and they're gonna stay, right? And they're gonna connect with the other parents on the stands where the kids are playing. So through kids, we will access those parents automatically, right? Because those parents, they're gonna start bringing their kids to games, if it's a basketball game or it's a soccer game. So I think facilitating that and making it easy for parents across the city to find where these kids can do different things. I think it's a way to connect them to the community as well, because now they can relate to other parents. They might find parents from the same background, or they might make friendships with different backgrounds.
One other thing that we have is we have sport exploration kits. They're free to borrow, and you can borrow them for like a week or weekend, a couple weeks if you want. And there's a couple different ones, and then there's winter ones as well. And we've had people borrow them for like work parties, birthday parties, different things like that. And even like you're saying with the soccer thing, we have spike ball. If a family came and took that and went to the park, and who knows who's gonna come up and meet other people, and it could become a weekly thing. So even just encouraging those like free play opportunities like the parks, disc golf, different things like that.
What sports do you have? Like kids do you have?
Well, we have a couple different ones. We have an Olympic one, so it's specifically like different things in the Olympics, so track and field, rugby. We have a multisport one, so there's baseball, lacrosse, soccer, football. We have a multicultural one, so it has sports from different countries. We have a winter one, a summer one, so those ones are more like shovel, build a snowman, and then like the summer ones are
The winter and summer ones are actually play kits.
yeah.
So they're not sports, but they're all
plays.
physical activities. And those are a partnership with Lethbridge Plays.
Mhm.
that we've done
Okay.
those, so.
Mm-hmm. But yeah, so and those are all free to borrow, and then we have like spike ball and different game kind of stuff as well.
Those are available on the website.
Yes.
Okay.
Any other questions? A couple more minutes.
I do have a question. So 2 questions, both for John actually. So people are talking about like people needing to be able to find out what there is and like make those connections. If an organization wanted to actually reach out, so I'm not sure who anybody's with, but let's say I was here and I'm with, what's the Harry Potter sport?
Quidditch.
Let's say I'm with Quidditch and I want to, we're looking to expand and we're wondering if you have people who might be interested. Like, was there somebody I could call to say like, hey, we're interested in doing a camp or a clinic or this free program, or like how would somebody actually connect with you?
So it's probably the best way is, have you heard of the Lethbridge Local Immigration Partnership?
Can you say that one more time?
The Lethbridge Local Immigration Partnership.
Okay.
Okay, and so I think it's every second Friday, there's a thing called a LIN meeting, so it's a Lethbridge Interagency Network meeting, and it's a virtual meeting, and community organisations from various service providers attend that meeting, and then they all talk about their programmes and advertise whatever it is. So that's one avenue, and it's probably the best avenue to use is and we also have a website which is Newcomers access. So I think it's 17% of Lethbridge are newcomers, and so they're not all our clients. But there's this landing page because everyone will kind of access this website gets a significant amount of hits, and it translates into 133 languages.
It's amazing. I love it.
I know, and it's the one website where service provider sports and things like that can advertise on it. So there's kind of drop-down menus, and there's like services for newcomers, and it's got things like access to healthcare, house purchase, information. There's a newcomer information guide, but things like any like sports and things like that can also be advertised on that, and it's a passive way of people finding out without actually.
And what was that again?
It's called the Local Immigration Partnership, or the LIP.
That also made me think, I kind of forgot, on our Sport for All page, we have an events and programs like carousel, and I'm constantly updating it with any free or inclusive programming in Lethbridge. So we have an All Abilities Lacrosse that just started last week. That's for all ages, all abilities, all experience, all genders. And so that's on there with all the details. So that's just always changing as the events happen.
I did have one more question. So John, you mentioned earlier about the, I forget exactly what the question was that led you to this, but how if clubs could have some sort of a support or like peer mentor program to shadow and help like those newcomer athletes. I know you were intending that to be like the athletes having that peer support and that person. Have you had any experience with, because sometimes, it's a brand new world for the parents as well. If they sign up for skating lessons, like the kid's never been on the ice, but the parents also never had a kid in skating lessons, or maybe been on the ice themselves.
Yeah.
Have you had experience with that being like a successful thing that an organization could do as well, as to buddy up the parents?
Yeah, yes. So not necessarily with a sport flavour, but it can also be applied to sport. Is that we run a community connection volunteer program, and so we have a newcomer family, newcomer individual, and we have a series of volunteers that volunteer to be a match for that family. And it's the kind of like, trying to summarise it very briefly, it's kind of like your next door neighbour. So you first of all, you move into Lethbridge, you don't know anyone, and you knock on the next door and say, hey, where can I get my tyres done, or where can I get my nails done or my hair done, where's the best place to go for that? And when we make this volunteer match, that's the kind of thing that we're doing. So it's not like a full-time commitment. You have the volunteer family, you have the newcomer family. The volunteer family are saying, contact the newcomer family, say, hey, we're going to Henderson Park for a walk around the lake. Do you fancy coming? And they bring them in, and then that family they get to practice their English, they get to learn a bit about culture, they can ask questions, and then they know all the services in Henderson Lake. And it's likewise, it's, hey, we're going shopping, do you want to come to Walmart with me? And they take them into Walmart and they show them the leaflets when you walk through the front door about where all the deals are. So the same thing could be applied to sport, and in some cases it might be. It's just that I'm not aware of it. Maybe that volunteer has taken that family and introduced them to some sort of sporting activity, or it could have been, but the volunteer does a whole host of other stuff, and that could be definitely one for consideration. And I'll speak to the program manager tomorrow about that, because that could be a thing. So there's the families being mentored, and then the kids all run around and they play with each other and things like that. And it's,
I know I've experienced that as when you put your kid in something new.
yeah.
And for me, language isn't a barrier, and transportation isn't a barrier, and all of those things. And it's new, and like they do things differently than other organizations. So just navigating all that can be tricky when you don't have those barriers.
Yeah.
So I can only imagine how much, more dissuading it would be if you do have those barriers. So that would be
amazing.
That would be amazing.
If there was a peer support group. God.
Parents and kids.
New good idea.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, thank you for sharing about your experiences and helping us learn ways we can be more intentional about connecting newcomers to sport. We are going to have a second version of this in the new year. With actually, there will be a couple female athletes, so that'll be announced once we figure out some dates with them. They all play basketball, so we got to work off their seasons. So the next session, Para and Sport Inclusivity and Excellence, with the Stedward Center and Dr. David Legg, who's the past president for the Canadian Paralympic Association, will be hosted in the new year on January 25th, 6 till 8:30 p.m. And I'll send you a reminder email and everything, but just so you know, we have a little bit of time. But yeah, thank you guys so much for all your insight, and we really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah.